Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks for joining. So I want to sort of just start off by walking through what we're going to be doing tonight in the class. This class is going to be probably like an hour and a half, just kind of checking out who's on here. So just because it's just a sort of a smaller group right now, I think what I'm going to do is show you a kind of a quicker option to do this heart. I do have a fuller version of that that will be posted tomorrow morning, and sort of a quick model version of it, which will be a more sort of in-depth version. But just to kind of keep things moving a little bit, I want to just be cautious of time. So yeah, so let me just go ahead and kind of walk you through how we're going to be doing this. So basically, there's sort of two options that I'm going to demonstrate tonight. So the first option, so basically, this is the order of modeling. We will be first working on modeling the heart shape itself. Then we will be applying your text or your wording. And then at that point, you'll need to decide, do you want to make this a single solid heart pendant like this one, or do you want to split the heart into two? So from that point, once you make that decision, you'll either model the top loop here or the two holes here. And then if you've decided you're just going to do the solid single pendant, then you don't have to stay for the split, but then I'll sort of show how to split it at the very end, which is really just a few more steps. And just to give you kind of a sense of the price point for these two items in case you want to fabricate them through Shapeways, the large single heart pendant is about $30 to $50 to make in brass, bronze, or silver. And then the two individual split heart pendants are about 50 to 30 each. I'm sorry, 15 to 30 each, in again, brass, bronze, and silver. Okay, let's go ahead and jump right in. So go ahead and click Create New Design. And again, sorry, let me just step back for a second. So this class, in case you weren't here for the last one, this class will run the same as last week's in that I am not doing a deep dive into the very, very, very basics. So anything like orienting your work plane, all of these different tools up here, being able to rotate an object, being able to resize an object, all that stuff. Hopefully, you have already taken the introduction to Tinkercad or you joined me for last week. So if you have not, you will want to take that introduction class because this is going to be sort of a more of a focus on modeling and less on the sort of basic walkthrough. So that being said, let's jump right in. So what I'm going to sort of show first is this this basic menu shapes has a heart already. And I just want to show you what that looks like. So there is this sort of heart shape, and there's nothing wrong if you want to just sort of start with this heart and then sort of pick up and add, add the words a bit later. What I do want to sort of show, though, is more of a manual process where you have more design freedom because this technique can really be applied to anything that you're making. If you're doing a design where there isn't really anything in this basic shapes menu that mimics that design or that sort of piece of geometry, I want to give you the tools to really be able to be creative about how you use basic shapes to create more complex and compound shapes. So that's what we'll be walking through today. Okay. So I would just ask, I want to make sure that I'm not going too fast for any of you. And so please don't hesitate to just drop a note in the comments if you need to see something again, or if I'm moving too fast, I want to make sure to accommodate you guys. So you're on about a 5-second delay with me. So if you do make a comment, just bear with me. I will make sure to keep my eyes peeled for that comment so that I can see. I'll be looking at my screen at the comments every minute or so. Okay, so jumping right in. So the first thing that we're going to do, as I mentioned, is build that basic heart shape. So to do that, we're going to start by building one side of the heart and then the other side of the heart. So first of all, grab the cylinder and drop it on the work plane. And so what you can do is the way that I'll do this class is I will demonstrate the steps, and then I will say, okay, now you can go ahead and do that, and I will do those steps again. So I'll kind of undo, backtrack, and then I'll do it again. So you can watch the first time, and then you can, when I cue you, you can move over and follow along and do this in your own on your own work plane. So go ahead and just watch for now. So what we're going to be doing is grabbing a cylinder, and then we are going to be navigating to the top view, which is this top orientation cube up here. So you'll see that when I click top view, it snapped into the sort of bird's eye view. I'm going to scroll in just so I can see what I'm doing here. And then I want to just call out, in case you're not familiar with it, this flat view toggle. So watch my screen when I click this. It flattens out my image. And this looks more like a sketch and less like my eyes would see a cylinder if I was looking down at a cylinder. So why don't you just go ahead and do that, and I'll just kind of reverse that. So this is your time now to do that. So you're going to grab a cylinder, the orange cylinder from the basic shapes menu, drop it on the work plane, and then navigate to the top view in the orientation cube. Scroll in a little bit so that you can see it, and then click that switch to flat view on the bottom left-hand menu. So once we're there, we are going to manipulate this cylinder a little bit. So the first thing is we want to increase the number of sides. So when you select the cylinder and it's highlighted, that blue line shows that it's highlighted, the shapes menu pops up. So go ahead and slide that toggle, that slider bar, all the way up where it says sides. So you should see sides, number of sides is 64. So let me just show that again, and then you can go ahead and do that. So single click to select your cylinder, and then drag the toggle bar all the way up, that slider all the way up on the sides menu. So you have 64 sides. So at this point, we are going to reshape this cylinder to be more of an ellipse or an oval. This is going to build sort of one half of the heart, of the sort of lobes, the two lobes of the heart. We're going to build the first one. So at this point, you have some decisions to make. You don't have to really worry about the size right now. We're going to size this heart down or up after it's completely sort of built and it's in its heart shape. But right now you want to just kind of play with the overall shape. So you can just sort of watch here. So I'm right now kind of keeping an eye on the sort of the top shape, and I'm sort of thinking about, okay, if this is sort of my heart shape up here, is that roughly the sort of proportions that I want? So while you're reshaping your oval, you'll want to kind of keep in mind that you're not going to really see how it turns out until you've copied it and mirrored it over. So you may decide that you later want to go back and revise it, but this is sort of more of a process to show you how to do it. So go ahead and reshape your oval. And sort of get like, all right, like we're going to do some like little chubby hearts here. So you just want to, and I'm just going to show that again, and you can follow along. So single click that cylinder and start to click on one of those corner boxes or one of the little midpoint black boxes and drag this cylinder into more of an oval shape. Okay. So once we've done that, really to understand how this looks as a heart, we need to sort of rotate this and then put the other oval in position to create the two lobes of the heart. So you can watch here. So to do that, and again, please shout out on the comments if you need me to slow down or anything. So to rotate our oval, we're going to grab this side rotational arc and we're going to start to rotate it into a position that looks like one sort of lobe of a heart. And really to understand like what this looks like, you're going to want to actually rotate it and then go ahead and duplicate it. So to duplicate it, you single click the oval, duplicate up in this upper left corner, looks kind of like a bunch of pieces of paper stacked up. And it blinks once to show you that it's duplicated. And now you're going to go over to mirror, and it's on the other side of the menu on the upper right hand corner. You click mirror, and then you decide which axis you want to mirror it over. And when I hover, it actually, this is a symmetrical oval, so it's not going to look different, but we're going to click, you can click either one of those. So you can kind of just watch and I'll do this again. So now that we have our mirrored oval, it's been duplicated and mirrored, we're going to use the arrows to toggle it over. And this is, so now you can really say, oh, okay, this looks like a heart. Is this, what I'm going for? And so at this point, if you're like, ooh, maybe I made the heart too skinny, I wanted it more chubby, you can just undo that. We haven't done too many steps. And you want to just get to the point where your oval is standing upright or sort of, perpendicular or parallel to this workplane grid. And then, you can widen it a little bit, make it a little bit chubbier, and then duplicate it again. Sorry, I got to rotate it first. Rotate it, duplicate it again, mirror it over. And there you have a heart. So in this case, I'm like, ooh, I think I needed to rotate my oval a little bit more. So I'm just going to delete that one, rotate it a little bit more, duplicate it again, mirror it again, and then move it again into this heart shape. And there you have essentially your basic heart. So go ahead and do that again. Do that on your own if you haven't. I'm just going to do this one more time so that you can, and I'll talk through it so that you can listen and follow along and do this in your workplane. So I'm left with my oval that I've reshaped to be one lobe. So I click it. I click it. I'm going to rotate it to be more in the position of a heart. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to mirror it. And then that mirrored copy, I'm going to use my arrows to move it over. So one thing I will say, just look back here on the screen for a second. So what I want to kind of point out is, I'm going to zoom into the bottom. So right now, I have two ovals that are overlapping each other. What you want to avoid happening is if you move it too far, you start to get this little kind of like pinch point right there. And that's not too bad, but that will show up in a casting. So you just want to kind of be just sort of zoom in and check out what is going on right down there, and just make sure that that bottom is sort of smoothed out. And so I did mention before we started that I'm going to do kind of a shortened version just to kind of be sensitive to the time, so we're not running like super late. I'd like to kind of keep this like maybe more to an hour or a little bit less. If you do want, so let me just quickly kind of show you what I would be doing in the quick version that I'll have up tomorrow, where I'll do sort of less commentary. If you decide that you would like this heart to be kind of more pulled in right here, the version that I have, which does really add to the time, and you can just watch along. I'm just going to kind of show you this right now. That version, it looks more like this, where I take an actual another shape and I manipulate that shape to cut out some of the area. I use this shape to cut out some of these like excess overhangs. And so what does that mean? So if you think about this shape right here, and I slice all of this off, that gets you into kind of a more traditional looking heart. It adds quite a few steps to this demo. So for this purpose, just to kind of keep things moving, I want to just create our heart using these two shapes. And remember, if you're like, ooh, I would prefer more of a traditional heart, more of a pointy heart, you can always go back to that heart example in the basic shapes menu that I showed you right there, and you have that sort of option as well. So at this point, that's the time to kind of choose what kind of shape you would like. So once you are happy with your shape, we're going to go ahead and group both of these items. So you either drag a bounding box around the two of them, or you click one, you hold shift, and you click the second one. You want to guarantee that they're both selected by seeing that they have this blue boundary. That means that they're both selected. You can also look in the shapes menu, and the shapes menu says two items are selected. So as long as you've got these two lobes selected, go ahead and group those items, which is right up here above the shape menu. And now we have a heart that looks kind of like those little like candy hearts that you get in the little box during Valentine's Day. So that could be kind of something to inspire you as well. Okay, so let's do one more thing before we start to add on to our heart. Let's actually rotate this, and you can just watch right now. And let's just make this a little bit skinnier to start. Okay, so you go ahead and do that. So again, let's just select the heart and just drag down that. It's not perfect. It's not your final iteration. We're going to need to sort of size this thing first, but just to kind of get this a little bit smaller so that we can start to think about the correct size. Okay. So let's now navigate to the top menu again. So at this point, I kind of want to just discuss the sizing for a moment. So let me just get here in my notes. Okay, so at this point, we have to decide what the size is going to be of our heart. So right now, you might be wondering, if you weren't in the last class, what these grids are. So right now, if you look down at SnapGrid, you can see 1 millimeter. And what that means is that each of these grid boxes, these lighter blue lines, are 1 millimeter boxes. So that means that these larger grid boxes are 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter. If you are someone who works in inches, you're welcome to change that to inches. I'm going to be working in millimeters. I'm most comfortable that way. But I can kind of give you some guidance as well. So right now, this heart is roughly 3.5 centimeters just by looking at the grid that it's sitting on. Because we're adding words here, we don't want to size this heart to be super, super small. I would say if you are going to be just putting like your initials or someone else's initials on this, and you're just going to be doing 2 or 3 letters, you could really size this heart down to be 1/2 inch or so. But if you are putting, 2 lines of text or a couple of words on here, I would really recommend that this heart stay about 1 inch or larger. And in millimeters, that's about 26 millimeters. So I'm going to kind of size mine right to 26 millimeters. So let me show you a new tool. Up in the upper right-hand corner is this ruler tool. So if you click this and you kind of just hold it anywhere, we're going to kind of put ours. You can see it sort of snapping to the grid, and you can watch this right now. You just drop it somewhere. And basically that itself is now a ruler. I would recommend, putting it close to your heart. So at this point, this ruler is in the same increments as our snap grid. These are millimeters. So this is 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters, 20 millimeters, 25, 26. That's 1 inch right here. So you have to kind of decide for yourself, how big do you want this heart, and then you size it. I'm not really going to tell you that. You kind of need to decide that for yourself depending on what you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold shift and drag this heart shape down so that it's 26 millimeters in height. And I can also do that manually. I just sort of wanted to show you the ruler shape. So let me just actually undo that and show you the other way that you can size, and then I'll go ahead and have you do that. You can also just click on the heart if you know certain dimensions that you want to hit. In my case, I want to hit 26 millimeters, and I change that height to be 26 millimeters. The problem is, though, is that you can see that it squished my heart. So now I can either manually scale it back in, or if I really want to keep those proportions, I would use the ruler because then I can be sure about what I'm doing. So go ahead and do that now, and I'll just do it again slowly so that you have some time to follow along. So I'm going to be dropping my ruler onto the work plane. Doesn't really matter where on the work plane it is. You can say I haven't really landed in one of these grids perfectly, but that's okay. I'm really just following these increments. So I'm going to just drag my heart over so that it's right up along the border of that ruler tool that I just did. Make sure that I'm in the top view. And I'm going to click and hold shift while I drag this corner down until the top measures roughly 26 millimeters. And now I can also just verify the size right there. And I am good to go. And again, just I'm going to just pause for a second, but let me know if you do need more time or if you would like me to show that again. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're now moving on to that text that we're going to add. So at this point, just for now, because we're not really going to be doing too much to the heart right at the moment, I want to lock the heart just so that it's sort of frozen in place. So single click on the heart and click the lock button. And you'll know that it's in fact locked because it will highlight red. I'm sorry, purple. I do that sometimes when I see a color, I say the wrong color. Weird thing. So you again just click on that and click the lock button under the shape menu. You will also know that it's locked because that lock button will turn purple as well. Okay, so before we choose what our text is going to be, I want to show a really awesome tool. And so just watch along for the moment. So in this case, our heart is so our heart, actually, let me just one thing really fast. I realized that I didn't have you size the thickness of the heart. So I'm going to unlock this. I am just going to double check the thickness. So we just sized down the heart itself to be, in my case, about 1 inch tall. But I also want to make sure that the thickness of my heart is what I want. So I would recommend that you go anywhere between 2 millimeters at the thinnest to about, you could go up to 5 millimeters. I would probably say 4.5 would be the maximum thickness that you want. Otherwise, it gets kind of large. If you did a very small heart, a 1/2 inch or so, you could make that a little bit thinner, and it'll be more like kind of a very light, delicate little charm. I would say you could go down to as low as 1.5 millimeters in thickness. But if you did more of that like inch size heart or 26 millimeter size heart, you probably want to be around like the 2.5 to 3 millimeter range just to have sort of a nice weightier heart. So I'm actually going to go, let's just see what 2.5 looks like. I think I'm going to go 2.5 for myself. So just go ahead and do that now. And again, this is a thing that you can change later if you decide to. So I would just say you could even eyeball it and you can just, choose whatever you want. I'm just going to go with 2.5. Okay. So at this point, let's just go back and lock that heart. So single click to select it and then lock it. And it will have that purple highlight when you click it to verify that it's locked. All right, so let's navigate really fast back to the top view. I wanted to show you something really fast. So just kind of keep an eye on the screen for a minute. So I'm just going to grab a text file right now. And when I drop this down, and you can just watch right now, when I just drop this down, when I drop it down, you'll see that this text has landed on the work plane. And that's because the work plane, in a sense, has gravity. So when I put new objects into the work plane, they automatically fall to the ground. That makes it a bit tricky because I know that I actually want my text to land on the surface of my heart, not on the work plane. I don't want to cut all the way through my heart. I just want to cut a little bit like an engraving. So this is a pretty cool trick. I can temporarily reset my work plane, reset where gravity falls. So up here next to the ruler command, if I click work plane, select it, when I now hover, and I'm not holding the mouse right now, it's just selected and it's just sort of glued to my cursor, you'll see that there's this little white box that shows, this little white pyramid that shows up on this like little bounding box. And what it's doing is it's sort of snapping itself or gluing itself to the surface of this object. So when I click on the surface, I've now temporarily reset my work plane. It's orange, and that's how I know that it's been reset. And now I can see that it's my new point of gravity is now on the surface of my heart. So now what happens, watch what happens when I put text in place. My text is now sitting on the new work plane. So this is a really, really helpful tool when you're trying to orient objects on other objects. So let me just reset that really fast. And I just clicked, so you'll notice that in flat view, this sort of looked a little odd. It's not how the eyes normally see perspective. So I just, for my own sanity, clicked this switch to orthographic, switch to flat view. So go ahead and try that now. So basically all you're doing is you're going to select the work plane and you're going to reorient it or reposition it onto the surface of that heart. And it will turn orange. That's how you know that you've dropped it in a new location. You can also sort of rotate around just to verify that your heart is now sitting right below the work plane. Okay, so how we are going to add text. So again, let's go back to that top view in the orientation cube. And if you still are seeing a bit of this perspective, go ahead and go back to that flat view so that it looks very flat like a sketch and not sort of like a perspective. So there are two different ways that I'm going to show you to add text tonight. We kind of, if you were in last week's class, we looked at the scribble tool, which is right here that you can manually sort of write your name. That's a way you could do it if you're familiar with the scribble tool. I will not be showing that right now. I will be showing it later though. I want to show you the text tool. So before I show you that, I will point out, if you are only doing a couple letters, 2 or 3 letters, I will point you also to, I just clicked on the basic shapes menu, to the text and numbers submenu. And this has the entire alphabet in kind of these like blockier letters. So these are always options that you can use. I won't be using that, but it's really the same process, so you can really follow along and do the same thing if you'd like to use those. I'm going to go back to the basic shape menu, and I'm going to select that text object. I'm going to drop it in place. So now you see this menu come up. And right now the text just says text. You can change the font. There's not very many font options, but you know, it works. I would select a non-serif text because sometimes these serifs can get very, very small and could be challenging to fabricate. If those serifs get so tiny, they may disappear or get polished away completely. So I would suggest doing either the sans text or the sans mono text. And then you can kind of play around with the bevel. So beveling adds some thickness to it. So I'm going to go a little bit bolder on mine, a little chunkier on mine. And then to change the text, what it says, just delete. So, gosh, I haven't even thought of what I'm going to write. I'm going to write bestie. Okay. So you just type in your new word. I'm going to put this to the side for a second. If you have chosen to do multiple words, so not just one word, but you want like, so I'll show the original one. The end is nigh. So in this case, if I type in, let me just change my language or my font. If I type in the end, so you have that option, but you really now this becomes one object. You cannot split these words apart. So you can do it this way. If you feel like there's too much space there and you're like, oh, when I scale this down, it looks pretty spaced out. If you feel like you want more control or you want to sort of stagger the letters, the words, I would also say create individual words as individual text objects. So and then go to duplicate. And again, I'm just showing all this. I'll give you some time to do all this. And then I would change that second one to end. And then I would carry on with the other words. So at this point, you've got more flexibility. If you want to get kind of creative with like this, with the size, maybe it makes more sense that the is smaller. You can get pretty creative with how you place the text. So go ahead and take some time. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to kind of create this, and I might just drop a couple different options down here. So again, to show you what those options were, you can either select from the text and numbers submenu, and you can say B. And feel free you can feel free and go ahead and do this if you are pretty good to go and you know what you want to say or know what you want to write. So BFF, okay, that's interesting. There's one. You can also go to the basic shapes, use the text tool, and rename or rewrite the word that you want. So I'm going to go back to my bestie. And then play with the bevel, thicken it up a little bit. So those are the two options. So let's just go ahead and have you, don't worry about the size of them, the scale of them. Just go ahead and get your, get your text onto the work plane, no matter what size it is. And I actually might do another option. So I'm just going to kind of play around, give you some time to get your word chosen and to get your get that completed. So I'm just going to do another minute or so, give you some time. I'll do something kind of fun. My husband has we have one of those like light boxes that's like a marquee. It's like a little like standing marquee where you slide different acrylic like letters into it. And a while back he put in the phrase "This is it," and I was like, this is very ominous and very weird. And then this whole like coronavirus thing happened. So I kind of feel like it was sort of a creepy omen or something. So maybe I'm gonna go with "This is it." Not to bring the whole mood down tonight. So you can see I'm just doing this version. And this is sort of like a nice way to like iterate through some ideas, is just to kind of go for it. Actually, and just sort of play with some different ideas, drops things around, copy and paste. Just you can be pretty creative with it. Actually, I needed to increase my thickness a little bit. It's a little bit too skinny. Okay, this is duplicate. Oops. Okay, so I am about to move on. So do let me know if you need more time. Yeah, that's kind of funny. I'm just going to actually delete that for the moment. Yeah, so let me know if you need more time. Otherwise, we will be moving on. Okay, so once you've decided on your hearts, I am actually I'm just going to drop this option off. I'm just going to do my text option. So now you need to sort of resize this down. So to do that, top view, get this nice and oriented. So you can really just click Shift and hold and grab the corner and start to scale this down. And really, you're just going to look, sort of play with the size of it and sort of the placement of it. So I'm just going to kind of drag mine down. You can use those arrows just to sort of roughly orient. I'll show you how to kind of align it perfectly. But now that this is super, super small, we kind of want to pay attention to a few things. So I may have overshot the mark a little bit. And again, you can just watch the moment. So what I'm looking at right now as I'm scrolling in, I'm looking at this spacing. This spacing is very, very tight. If I chose to fabricate this, this probably would not be successfully printed. You'd probably end up with just a connection right there. So for me, I might try a different font. That's better. You could also, if you do like this font, you don't want to go to those block letters on the other sub menu, you could also decide to break out this text as single letters. So just start with the B, then do the E, then do the S. So you could do it that way as well. For me, just to keep this moving a little bit faster, I am going to change my font and I'm going to increase the thickness a little bit. But you do want to kind of like take a look at that like very close up and try and understand like how small is that in reality. I remember that this was a millimeter. These like little grids are a millimeter. So that's like 3/4 of a millimeter of spacing. That should be fine. It was just really, really tight before. So do kind of like look at the spacing and make sure that you don't have details that are like super, super small. So the last thing that you want to do is we want to align this. So if you have one word, what you can do to align these, and when I say align, I mean you want to be able to get these centered. So you want to drag and select both items, or click and select both items. And then we use the align tool, which pops up these various nodes of alignment. So to do that, let me show you that again. So select both, click the align tool. Now, let me just talk through what this is. When I hover over these different alignment modes, I see my word bestie moving around. I see it previewing around. I'm looking for center alignment, meaning that I want the center of this word to line up with the center of this heart so that I have, I'm centered within the heart. So I'm selecting this, I'm hitting a line, and I'm clicking on that central node. That's telling me that there is alignment between these two objects' center points. You could also sort of play with the other points of alignment. For me, that moved it too low, and I don't really need that, so I'm going to undo that. So I'm just going to kind of backtrack and walk through all that again, starting from the resizing. And just you can follow along now and do this as well if you hadn't done it. Realize I've gone way too far back. Okay, so you were probably somewhere right here. So go ahead and do that. So the first step you're going to do is you're going to scale your word down, place it in your heart, scroll in, check that there's nothing that's way too small, make those changes if you need to, and then we're going to align the word within the heart. So I will do that and I'll sort of talk through it as I do that. So again, I'm going to be, and you can do this now, follow along with me. So I'm going to scale my word down by clicking and holding shift while I drag the corner bounding box, move it into place, continue to scale it down appropriately, use my arrows to kind of roughly orient it to where I want it to be. I'm going to check out, zoom way in, check out that I don't have anything that's very tiny or way too close together. And then to align it again, we're going to use a bounding box to select both objects, or you can select your heart, hold shift, select your phrase, and then use the align tool and find that central alignment. Now, you don't have to find the central alignment. If you feel like you're just going to do something that's a little bit more freeform, you don't want sort of this like perfect, perfectly centered cookie cutter design, that's fine too. You can totally be like, oh, nope, I want mine to be diagonal. In fact, like I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to leave that and go with that. So I'll just give you one more minute to kind of wrap up where your text is, and then we're going to move on. But do, again, drop in the comments if you need me to slow down or show you anything. Happy to do that. Okay, so we're going to keep moving. So at this point, we want to kind of reset ourselves. So let's just reset that work plane, and you can just watch along. So again, right now we still have the work plane that's orange and it's sitting on top of the heart surface. It's a little bit chaotic. So to reset the work plane, you just single click the work plane and you drag it anywhere else on the screen. And now all is right with the world. The work plane is back to normal. Your heart is now sitting on the ground. That is your work plane. So go ahead and do that now. So again, I'm just going to show you what it looked like before, and now you can do this as well. So to reset your work plane, select work plane up in the upper right-hand corner. It'll be now blue, kind of hovering on your cursor, and now just drop it anywhere to reset it, and your work plane should be blue like mine is now. Let's also just adjust that, toggle to the orthographic view if you feel like you're I don't know why I hate looking at things like this when we're pulled out in perspective. It really bugs me. Okay, so the last thing that we really need to do is get our text in the right position. So right now your text is probably somewhere in the region of the thickness of mine. Mine's 2.28. Doesn't matter what it is, we're going to change it. So we want this text. I'm going to show the version where the text is sunken or debossed or engraved. If you would like to have your text sticking off the surface like this, you can do that. I would not allow it to stick off the surface more than about a half a millimeter or so. Half a millimeter, 3/4 of a millimeter. Otherwise, you can start to run into some issues when you're 3D printing and fabricating it. So again, if you want to do that, that's fine. You'll just have to kind of size it and place it on top. I'm going to show the engraved version, sort of the more classic version of this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to resize our text to be the height of the depth of our engraving. And so you can just watch and I'll explain what I mean. So I want my engraving to be kind of deep. So I'm going to go 0.75 millimeters down into my heart. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is changing the height of this to 0.75 millimeters. 0.75. Okay, so now that's a very thin, more shallow engraving. So why don't you go ahead and do that now? So I'll just redo that. So whatever your text is, you want to click it all. Now, if you have multiple words or multiple letters that are individual objects, you'll have to do this manually, or you can select every single one of them individually and change the height to be the same across the board. So just make sure that you do whatever you do to one, that you do that to all of them. So I'm going to change that to 0.75 millimeters. And then so if you are keeping this as a raised or an embossing, this you're good. This is where it is now. This is it for you. If you want to follow along and make this an engraving, go ahead and change. So select your select your text, change it to be a hole, right? So now it's a hole. And now we're again going to use that align tool by grabbing with a bounding box everything. So I can see my two shapes. I can see that my text is highlighted and my heart is highlighted. And we're going to use that align tool again. But at this point, we are now looking for, oh, is this going to do it? Sorry. This. Yeah, okay. So what you're looking for, let me just show you that again. you're looking for just this top node to be gray. Let me just show you what happened though, because you might have to do a little bit of a workaround. So bounding box, select everything, click align, and if when you click the top node, if it doesn't, see, I just clicked it and it's not doing it. There's some kind of weird glitch that happens sometimes with align. That's okay. Click another one, like the bottom one, and then now go back up and click the top one. That should work for you. If that doesn't work for you, also, you can try unlocking this. This might be the key as well. You could also unlock that heart by selecting the heart and clicking the padlock to unlock it. Then select both, use the align tool, and let's try that again. Okay, so that's better as well. So it was fine with that. The key message here is that when you select these to the text and the heart and you hit align, you want just this top node on the side to be gray. That means that the top surface of the heart and the top surface of the text are in line with each other. So I'm just going to do that one more time just to make sure that you know where we've ended. So we had a solid text. If you are leaving it here, just hang tight. We're almost done with the section. If you are dropping this as an engraving, change it to be a whole. Select everything. Use the align tool and get those tops aligned however you need to so that the top node is gray. And then again, just send a comment up in case you need me to slow down or if you're stuck in some way and I can help. So I'll just give it a second and wait and see if anyone needs help. Okay, so it looks like you guys are good to go. So the last thing that we need to do here, if you have not unlocked your heart already, please unlock it now so that when you can now select it and it's got the blue border. So we're now going to select both objects and we're going to group them together. And now you have a cutaway of your text on your heart. If you had chosen to do the raised letters and it was a solid, you can also group those and that should just turn into the same color. So everything should turn orange or red or whatever color. It should all be the same color when you group it, and you should be able to verify that it is in fact grouped. So now if you drag it, it all moves together, right? Okay, so go ahead. Again, I'll just show you that and you can follow along. So we've unlocked the heart. We are bounding box selecting both objects, both the text and the heart, and we're going to group them together to complete our heart body. Okay, so moving right along. So now we are going to, so now you have to make a decision. If you are going to keep this as a solid single full heart pendant, you might consider adding a top loop right here. If you are going to split your heart, you're going to need to have two holes here to turn this into two necklaces. You could also add a top loop on both sides, but I find that it starts to not look like a heart anymore and it becomes a little bit confusing as to what it is. So I do recommend putting holes up there if you are splitting your heart. So you'll need to decide that. I am first going to show the top loop for the solid heart version of the pendant. Okay, so let's click on the top orientation view and start to build out that ring. So the first thing that we're going to do is grab another solid cylinder from the shapes menu. So let me just show you again, and then you can follow along. So clicking the cylinder, dragging it onto the work plane. I'm actually going to change the color of it just to kind of keep everything straight. And to do that, I just clicked on the solid color, which was orange, and I chose a new color, in this case, pink. I'm also going to increase the number of sides so that we have a nice, smooth surface of the cylinder. So let me just undo all that, and then you can go ahead and follow along. So we're going to grab the orange solid cylinder, drop it on the work plane, change the color to be something, in this case pink, and increase the number of sides to be 64. Okay, So at this point, we need to start to orient this and decide what size top loop do we want. So just orienting ourselves to that top view. I'm noticing this is really apparent now that I'm in the perspective view still because I can see all of this, and that's not helping me. So I'm going to go and change myself to that flat view so I can really see this more as a flattened sketch and not like perspective. So at this point, I am going to drag this into place, which is roughly going to be in the center. We'll align this later. I'm now going to also hold shift and scale this down. So now you might be wondering, how much do I scale this down? So that's not really something that I can decide for you. You sort of have to decide for yourself. What I can tell you is that this is going to be the outer edge of our ring or our top loop. So we're going to cut a hole away from the center of this. So this is going to be the outer edge. And again, like you can always build this and not group it and then decide to go back later and resize it if you feel like it's too big or it's too small. So just take your best guess right now and then you can decide if you want to go back. So go ahead and do that. Follow along with me. So again, that was just orienting to the top view, dragging our cylinder into place and holding shift while we sort of scale it down and take our best guess at what size it should be, using the arrows to move it into place, roughly into place. So now I had said we're going to add the cutout. So again, we're leaving the heart alone for a second. We're going to now just duplicate this cylinder, which is so you select the cylinder, you click duplicate up at the top, you change that to be a hole. Just go ahead and grab one of those. It doesn't really matter which one gets pulled away. Just grab that and then drag it to be smaller. So now you have to sort of scale this whole cylinder hole down further to get that to be a smaller ring. So at this point, I've held shift, I've scaled it down, and what I can tell has happened is that it's now a little bit short, so I need to kind of drag it back up there. So it's a little bit of a back and forth that you have to do to get this in the right spot. One thing that you could do right now is just grab both of these and scale them down just like a little bit so they don't get so crazy. But really, you're just going to be kind of roughly eyeballing how big that loop is going to be based on how big the hole is and how big the cylinder is. So I think I'm actually going to make my hole a little bit smaller so I can have kind of a chunkier ring. And so you can see that me using the arrows to move it around doesn't really center it. What I want to show you right now is that if you do want to kind of get a better sense of where it is center, you can also change the snap grid size. So right now, when I'm clicking on the hole and I'm moving my objects with the arrow, it's moving in 1 millimeter increments. I can click snap grid and I can change it to be smaller increments, 0.5 millimeter. So now it's moving 0.5 millimeter at a time. I can move it to be 0.1, and it's a very subtle movement. So that is like really, I can get this very close to center. So now I can really get a sense, okay, this is the size of my ring. This will be a cutaway or a hole, and that feels pretty proportionate to me. So once you're good there, you do want to do the actual aligning. So let me actually just kind of backtrack, and I'll start over with that hole and give you some time to kind of follow along. So we were here. We have duplicated our cylinder. We have turned it to a hole. You can drag it and move it out of place and scale it down, and then now move it back into place. Now, in your case, it might be hidden. So you can either move the solid cylinder down or you can move the whole cylinder up. You just want to be able to see where it is when you're in your top view. And then once you're roughly happy with the size of the hole, I'm going to actually go a little bigger. You're going to, now this is where everyone should be now, you're then going to truly align it and truly center it by selecting both of those objects. So clicking the solid, clicking the hole, and using that align tool. And now we're looking for both center points to be aligned. So you should have a gray center node along the top and a gray center node along the side. The one last thing here, let me just give you a chance to do that. So I was here. So go ahead and select your solid and select your hole, align them, and select the center nodes for alignment. Before you click out of that, though, you do want to check on the side what your thicknesses are. Oh, shoot. Okay. So let's actually adjust the thicknesses of these. So in a Return to Tiffany style, that classic, like, Return to Tiffany style heart pendant, the top loop is the same thickness as the heart itself. So I'm going to kind of go with that. I like that look. It's a pretty classic look. So if I forgot at this point how thick my heart was, which I did, I can hover there. Okay, 2.5. So let's just go ahead and resize the hole to 2.5, resize the solid to 2.5. Whoops, that was not the right dimension. Resize the solid to 2.5. My numbers are not working very well. What is going on? Let's see here. Okay, there we go. So you just want to basically make sure that your hole and your solid cylinders are now the same thickness as each other and the same thickness as your heart pendant. Then to get these to be in line, we know that they are in line from this perspective, but to get them in line from this perspective, we have to align them. So at this point, we can grab all of this and we can align all of these objects. So to do that, you can just watch and then I'll do it again and you can follow along. So I'm going to go to my right side view. Make sure that it's flat. If your view looks like this, you need to click this view, this toggle view over here. I'm going to select all of these objects. So I see 3 objects selected: my heart, my hole, and my solid cylinder. I'm going to hit align, and I'm going to use any of these nodes to align because they're the same thickness. If you click one of these nodes and not all 3 have turned gray, it means that something is not the same thickness as the rest of the items. And you should be able to see what it is. So let me just do that again. So we had I'll start over from resizing the hole. So go ahead and follow along if you had not resized your hole and your solid cylinders to match your heart thickness. So my hole should be 2.5. And my solid should be 2.5. And then I'm going to toggle to the right side view. That's ensuring that it's flat. Highlight, bounding box, select all of these objects, 3 objects. Use the align tool and then align them so all 3 nodes have turned gray. I would also double check from the top view that nothing has happened here. You could even select all of these objects and verify the alignment of all of them and make sure that the center points are aligned. Just that top gray one is aligned. So let me go ahead and give you a chance to do that. Okay. And then at this point, we are going to select both of those objects, and the solid and the hole, and we are going to group these. And now you have a ring. So one thing to point out here, if you did have text up here, and this text is overlapping, so say it was like that, right? And you've got your ring is overlapping your text in some way, you are going to want to cut this away so that it doesn't interfere. And I'll just show you quickly how to do that. So you may do this, you may not have to do it. Depends on what your text is. I'm just grabbing a box hole from the menu, dropping it really right there. What I'm looking to do is cut away all this material here. And I don't want to cut away any of the ring up here. So I don't want this to be there because now I'll have a little gap. I want it to be down here. And then you can just select your box hole and you can select your ring and then group those to cut it. And then you're clearly not intersecting with your letters anymore. So at this point, you might be done. If you are, you want to just select those together and then group them. They'll all turn the same color, and now you can really see and visualize what your heart pendant looks like. If you instead would like, so if you're good here, feel free to exit and you're good to go. You can always select this. You can export it and then upload to Shapeways. I have a little video on how to fabricate. But I will go ahead and still show if you want to split this into 2 halves. And so I'm just going to quickly undo this, make a copy for myself so I can hide this. I'm just going to group that back together. So I've got one finished and then hide it. Oops. Group it, hide it. Okay. All right, so still have someone hanging in here with me, so let's keep moving. And now I'll show you the version where we split it in half. So in this case, you're deleting this. And you, in this case, want to add 2 holes right up here. So go ahead and grab a cylinder hole and add it to the work plane. Select it, increase those number of sides. So go ahead and do that now. I'll do it again. Grab the cylinder hole, drop it on the work plane. Increase the number of sides. And then at this point, it probably makes sense to decide what the hole should be because it's going to be very small. And I want to suggest that if you don't know at this point what kind of jump ring you might use, I would err on the side of a little bit bigger. So I would say 2 millimeters is probably, if you have a 1 inch or so heart, I would say 2 millimeters is probably as small as you would want to go with the hole. I might actually see what 2.5 looks like. And then you can just grab that hole and you can place it roughly where you think it will be. Now, in my case, I realize I'm going to have an issue over here, so I'm actually going to start mine right there. Just because that's where it kind of has to be placed so that I don't accidentally cut through my text. Yours probably will be more like this if you ended up writing more horizontal and not at a diagonal like I did. So again, go ahead and resize that hole to be what you think it should be. I would say 2 or greater. I might go to 2 since I know that I'm going to have to place mine in an odd little location. And then place it on one side only. Okay. So now that you have this one hole, so we're going to duplicate this. And let me show you kind of a cool way to group and align things that aren't truly touching. So you can just watch for the moment. So to do this, to get the hole onto the other side in the same location. So I'm going to duplicate the hole. I'm just going to use my arrows for now. I'm just sort of sliding this over. And you can see that my snap grid probably needs to get a little bit higher to 0.5. Okay. So I'm just going to roughly position this where it should be. So I know that this is aligned in this direction because I just used arrows to move it over. It didn't go up or down, just over to the left. But I think that I would like to guarantee that these are exactly in the same place on each lobe of the heart. So to do that, this is kind of a cool trick that I like to use a lot. If you select 2 objects that are independent of each other that are not touching and you group them, they start to act as one object. So you can see I'm clicking and I'm dragging one of them, but the other one's moving along. These are now acting as one unit. So I can now position this roughly where I want it and then guarantee its symmetry within the heart by using that align tool, that centered align tool. So now I know that these holes are in exactly the same location on either side of this heart. So now I'm saying, oh, this is really close to my letters. Let me just move that up a little bit. In fact, I'm actually going to, nope, that's too high up. I'm actually going to ungroup this, and I'm going to move one of these over a little further. Is that the right direction? No, a little closer. And I'm going to, again, group these temporarily so they act as one unit. I'm going to select the heart and my single unit, which is 2 holes. I'm going to align them in the center. And now, okay, that's a better position for me. This may not be where your holes are. Your holes might be further, a little wider. I would recommend them to be a little bit wider. These are just close because they're running into the letters. But that's essentially what you're looking for. So let me just give you a second to catch up there if you're not already. Okay, and we're nearing the end. So the last thing, as you probably know by now, we just want to, I'm just looking underneath and I actually can see that these holes somehow are not colliding with the entire heart. So I'm just going to click them and move them down just to make sure. You don't have to bother resizing them. We're just going to use them to cut away. So go ahead and do that now. Just make sure that you're, you kind of look underneath and see, you want to see those holes peering out on this side. If they're not, just grab them if they are still grouped together and move them down so they're clearly cutting through. And then select everything and group. All right, so we are in the home stretch. So the last thing that we have to do is split that heart. So let me just give you 1 second to catch up to that, and then I will get to my notes as well. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do, the scribble cut, the cutaway. So to split this in half, I'm just going to show you the fast way to do it. If you wanted to build a complex little shape using all these boxes in different different shapes, you can do that. I'm going to show you the kind of fast, more organic way of doing that. So I mentioned the scribble. If you were with me last week in the class, you know the scribble tool. If not, bear with me. We're going to just walk through that together. So you can just watch this right now. So Scribble is a great tool. What it is when you click it into the workplane, you're put into this different interface. Now, the only problem with this is that I can't actually see my heart anymore. So I'm kind of taking a shot in the dark as to what my split sort of cracked shape is going to be. But that's okay. We can kind of iterate through this. So I am going to start to draw what I want my crack to look like, the broken sort of heart shape. I think that's good for me. Now watch what I'm doing here though. I'm extending this all the way out because I need to make a cutting tool out of this. All right, so once we're here, and again, just watch along right now. So once we're here, I don't need to get too detailed at the moment because I just want to kind of see where I'm at. Do I like this? Is this the right sort of shape and proportion? So I'm gonna, now that I have this massive cutting tool that's hollow, I'm gonna go to my top view, flatten my view, scale this way down, and I'm gonna show all this again, so don't worry about it. Just follow along for now. Okay, so now I'm sort of looking at, right now I'm just looking for where is my cut gonna land? Where is it gonna sit? Can I work with this as it is? Do I need to modify this? So I actually feel like it's kind of okay. That's actually kind of interesting. I might actually choose to rotate this. And again, I'm going to show this again. So don't worry about doing this right now. But I'm just showing you what you're going to be doing. So you're going to be looking at what does my cutout look like? I think I'm actually kind of okay with that. What you want to avoid is having little slivers So like if I were to do that, for example, where you now have this like very thin sliver, that's not going to like be successful in printing. I actually might change this. So you can follow along while I change this. So this is why I said like don't worry about the fact that this can't cut through it right now. This isn't a solid. We just want to start to kind of like understand the shape that we've created, and then we can revise it. So now that I know, okay, actually, I don't even know if I want this whole section. I might just extend this. So I think, so let me tell you what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to kind of go more like that. Like that. I think that's what I like. So now that I kind of know what I'm doing here, I'm going to edit my scribble. So when I edit my scribble, I am just going to, let's see here, what am I going to do? I am going to erase all of this top because I've decided this is just not really necessary. So I'm literally just like erasing it with this erase tool. That was the erase tool, draw tool. So I'm just erasing it, and I'm going to redraw to connect this here. So now let me just go back and look at that. Do I like that? Yeah, that's the position that I'm looking for right there. That's the sort of orientation. Okay, so let me have you guys do that. And I'm going to do it again. You can follow along. I'm just going to literally delete this and show this to you again. So you're going to be using the scribble tool. Just drop it anywhere in the workplane and just start to create your scribble, your cut, your sort of zigzag shape. It doesn't have to be zigzag. It can be whatever you want it to be. I'm just kind of going with that, again, that classic zigzag. And just remember to give it this like nice wide rectangle that it's attached to. It's kind of like a little like funky razor blade. Okay, and then once you're happy with that, and because this is the last thing that we're doing, this is really easy to kind of backtrack out of if you want to revise it. So don't worry if you're like, oh, I don't love it. Like that's okay. All these things can be revised. So now you're going to go to your top view. You're going to flatten your top view so that you can really get a real sense of the orientation. You're going to start to scale this down. You can hold shift to keep it proportionally the same. And start to move this in place and verify if you like the type of scribble that you have. And again, you're looking for roughly like, you don't want any like weird little slivers like that right there, right up there. That's a weird little sliver. You want to really like make this kind of land right in the center. So whatever you have right now, I'm going to kind of keep moving through this because it's like this is one of those things where you could kind of endlessly iterate on the shape of that. I actually don't love that shape, but just for the sake of keeping things moving, I want to show you the rest. So we have to make this a hole, and it has to be able to cut away. So having this big gap doesn't help us. So once you're happy with this shape, edit your scribble again, and let me show you a quick way to fill this in, because right now being like, oh my god, I have to paint all this, holy cow. If you use this little draw shape like blob icon down here, watch how this works. This is so cool. So if I am single clicking and holding, and this little like dashed line pops up as I move my cursor, I'm still holding the button. It's a great way to mass fill in sections, right? So it's kind of weird. At first you're like, whoa, how does this work? But then you just quickly realize you basically just want to like magic bounding box, or whatever they call that in Illustrator. You just want to kind of like go over everything. And this is a really nice way to fill this in. So you will need to fill all this area in order to make this a proper cutting tool here. So go ahead and be doing that with me. And I'm actually going to give you a little bit of time to do that as I realize your cutting tool might be, this is the first time using this tool perhaps, and the cutting tool is a little crazy. So you want to really ensure that there's no little gaps because even like a teeny little gap like that will show up and may leave a little like leftover blob. So make sure that all of this is solid blue inside of there. So I'm going to give you like 1 more minute to do that. Okay, so once you're good, let's hit done. And we're just going to quite simply change this to be a hole. Make sure that your hole is overlapping. Mine is not. I'm actually going to just, in this case, drag my heart up. It got a little bit lower there. Just want to make sure that the hole is clearly, cleanly overlapping the heart. Before you cut this, though, before you group this, want to make a copy of this because you're going to need to do the other side. So just select your heart, duplicate it, and you can actually just kind of drag it off to the side if you want to, just to make sure that it's definitely still there. So once you have your copy of your heart up there, select your hole, select the heart, group. And you've got now 1/2. So at this point, you might look at this. I'm looking at this and being like, whoa, this looks super weird up here. That's okay. You can go back and kind of revise that once you sort of see it. I also realize that I have one of those like little awkward slivers down there. So that's probably not going to be great for me. But just for the sake of finishing and showing you how to do this, let's just kind of keep moving on. So go ahead and select the heart, select the scribble hole, group. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. We have to make a copy of the scribble hole as well. Sorry about that. Actually, just do me a favor. Delete that. We're going to copy both of these. So duplicate both, and let's just go ahead and actually hide them. So you can see that it's hidden up there. This is going to make this a lot easier. Yeah. So now grab both, group them, and now you're good to go. So let's show those items and grab, nope. Let's see here. I want to isolate. There we go. So we want to isolate this finished piece from these two. You might have to do that a couple times because it's very hard to select items when they're over top each other. So I'm just going to grab one and drag it away. That was not the one that I wanted. Let me try this combination. Yeah. So you basically just want to isolate these two together and hide this one. So it's very important right now not to accidentally move this because we need to maintain the fit of the two heart halves together. So just make sure that you don't actually, move them out of alignment from where they should be. So the very last step that we're going to do is we need to now cut the other side. We have this side, we now need to cut the other side away. So grab a box, drag that solid box onto your work plane, and scale it up so that it is clearly overlapping the scribble cut tool, and it is clearly overlapping the heart itself. So let me just do that again, show you that. So grab the box tool, drop it over the heart, scale it up, just size it up so that it's clearly overlapping the scribble and it's clearly overlapping the heart underneath. You also want to make sure that the cut tool is larger than the box. So in this case, I need to make this box tool smaller, this box solid smaller. I need to make my hole or my cutter bigger and make sure that it's overlapping down there. So now what happens? Now I'm going to grab my scribble hole and my solid box and I'm going to group them. So now you can see we're making another cutter for the other side. So let me just do that again. I'm going to just go and just follow along. I'm going to go back to this point. So this is now starting over to cut our other side, grabbing our box solid, dropping it in place, making it larger so that the box solid is clearly overlapping the scribble hole and clearly overlapping the solid heart. We want the scribble hole to be larger than the box solid. So just make that box a little bit shorter just to make sure it clearly cuts through it. Select the scribble, select the box, group to cut. And now this becomes your other cutting tool or your other hole. So turn that into a hole. So if you now grab these two objects and you group them, now you have the other side of your heart. And again, this is like totally what I told you not to do right there. So I definitely can't fabricate that. I have to rework the placement of that. So that's my bad, but hopefully you had better success than I did just now. So now when you hide your objects, these two items should really have like a nice fit together like that, right? That's what we're looking for. Two objects. So at this point, we have both of our objects here. You'll probably only have one. I've got two. So if you're going to export these and fabricate, if you do have, let me just ignore this for a second. So if you do have two halves of a heart here, you don't want to just export all of them. So clicking export, so see how the default is everything in the design? If you do that, that will cause both of those halves to export as one file, and that won't be printable that way. If you have two halves, you need to select one first, export it, and then make sure that the selected shape is toggled on. You can select an export an STL or an OBJ, and that file will load down here. And then go back, select the other one, and then export it. So make sure that you have two individual files. I would name one of them, left heart, right heart, just so that you know clearly that you've got two files so that when you upload to Shapeways, you can order them as individual files and that they're not stuck together. Okay, so that is the end of the class. So if you had any questions, certainly I'll be on just for another 30 seconds to a minute. I'll kind of keep my eye out. So, but yeah, thank you for joining. I would love to see your work. So definitely email me if you would like to. No pressure though. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I will jump off of here. And thank you again. So as of, I think tomorrow morning, I will have a quick guide recorded where it won't be this recording. It'll just be, well, this will be up there anyway, but I will have the quick guide recording. So if you do want to kind of jump back and start over and do another one, it'll move a little faster. And actually, it will be that more extended version that I showed you where you can really start to reshape this area right in here. So there are quite a few more steps at the beginning to build the heart, but you can have a little more customization options in terms of the shape itself. So that will be available as of tomorrow morning. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining me, and hope to see you guys next week. Okay, bye.